You're live streaming. We are good to go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Schofield. I am the chair of the Audit Committee of the City of Albany Industrial Development Agency. And I am calling the meeting scheduled for this morning at 10:30 a.m. to order. I would entertain a motion by one of the committee members, Mr. Sean Farr or Ms. Pito, to waive the reading of the minutes and adopt them as presented with the agenda materials.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
All doors open.
Aye.
For the rear of the train. Once again, station stop Hudson.
Aye.
Aye.
We know where Susan is. Okay, that motion carries. There is no unfinished business, which brings us right to our new business section of the meeting. And I believe that we are going to begin with the review of the draft 2021 audited financial statements, which are in your materials. Sarah, are we going to turn it over to you, or are we going directly to Emily to present those financial statements?
I think we can go straight to Emily. It does look on my screen like hers may be frozen. But if we've got, great, she's there.
She's moving and nodding. So, hi, Emily, how are you?
Hear me and see us okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all.
Emily, would you mind just introducing yourselves? The committee knows you, but the public that's watching may not.
Sure. My name is Emily Salingo with Tealdecker and Shearmonti, also joined by Christina Gerazio of Tealdecker and Shearmonti.
Well, welcome, and why don't you take it away?
Sure.
We're ready to be titillated.
Okay, great. So first, we just wanted to thank Tom and his team for all of their help during the audit. We appreciate all of their assistance, especially with the staffing changes. So everything went really great and smooth. We'll first start off with the financial statements in your packet. It's the third page is the independent auditor's report. So similar to previous years, we've issued a modified or a clean opinion on the statements. This means we didn't find anything that would cause us to modify or opinion or have any concerns about the agency. There was a change in the auditing standards this year. So you'll notice that the independent auditor's report, it's basically just in a different order this year. So we have the opinion paragraph first. They're just trying to call special attention to that opinion paragraph. But again, that's a clean, unmodified opinion for the agency. And the substance of the audit procedures performed and the responsibilities of the auditor and management have remained the same. It's really just the ordering of it that's changed.
And Emily, this is on page 10 of the board packet for those of you who are following along with the dockets online.
And yes, it should be the very first paragraph there that used to be at the end. So it's basically just, pointing that out. And there were no new accounting standards issued in the current year. So the financial statements are pretty comparable in terms of disclosures to last year. A couple pages back from that.
Station stop is Ryan Cliff, about 20 minutes, Ryan Cliff next. We do have a busy train today, ladies and gentlemen. Please make all seats available. We still have people.
Susan, can you mute your? Thank you. Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, that's okay. The statements of net position. So this is the first financial statement in your package. It will have the assets and liabilities presented.
And it is on page 18 of the online packet.
So here we can see that the agency maintained a strong cash position this year as well. And overall cash increased approximately $441,000, and that's due to the positive inflows from the project closings during the year. You can also see a couple lines down, the accounts receivable number increased, and that's really just a result of timing of the bond fee payments that were received for the project closings during the year. It's really just a cutoff timing. And then the restricted cash position, that fluctuated a little bit, and that's just due to the net activity during the year related to the eminent domain proceedings. And then also down below, there is a restricted net position number. So this is just noting that these funds are earmarked for a specific purpose that they were used for throughout the year. And I also wanted to note the mortgage notes receivable and the mortgage payable this year was actually moved up to a current asset and current liability, where in the past we've had that as a long-term liability. And that's because that's actually due, I believe it's December 23rd of this year. So since it's within the 1-year date of year end, we've moved that up. So that will look a little bit different as well this year.
Emily, when you moved it up, it did catch my eye for the first time, and I realized that I'm not sure I remember what the transaction underlying that entry is. I'm not sure if you know or if that's a question for staff, but the note didn't really tell us what it was.
So that is, I can actually pull up some additional information we have on that on our end. I believe that's related to is it the Albany housing? Let's see.
Tom or Amy, if you have that information before Emily gets to it.
Well, we can park that and we can come back to it. The note's very clear on the accounting treatment of it, and I appreciated that, but it didn't tell us what the origination of the mortgage was. And forgive me if I've been told this before, Sarah and Tom, I don't remember. So maybe before the end of the meeting, we can try and clarify it.
Yeah, I can pull up, I have the original agreement. I'm just trying to open up. It's with the James Housing Development Fund. That's who the receivable is due from. And then I'll find, I have the original agreement from years ago. I think it was like 92. I believe it's a mortgage with James Housing Development.
Yeah, and it's of course coming to our attention because it's not buried in another category now because it's current, right?
Right.
Okay, well, let's move on and we can try and get some clarification.
Okay. So on the next page is the statements of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position, which would be on page 19 of your materials.
Right.
And here we can see that the agency fees have increased from the prior year, which again is a result of the timing and amount of project closings. And then below in the operating expense section, we can see that these have also slightly increased, which we would expect to see those expenses also increase with the increase in revenues. So that seemed comparable to us. And down below, you can see there's a net income this year of approximately $842,000, which increased the net position to $3.6 million. So next is all of the footnotes. And again, those are pretty comparable to last year since there was no new accounting changes or anything like that. Just going into some more detail on some of the line items, but I did want to point out note 6. So at the bottom of the page, it's page 16. And at the very top of that, it says note 6, industrial development revenue bond transactions. So this number has
Page
actually
25 of the materials, right?
Thank you. So this number has been updated as we've actually received back all of the bond confirmations from the banks. So we are completely done with those, which is great news, getting that done, early on in March. So right now, this number is approximately $57.9 million for the current year end. So that's what's outstanding per the bank confirmations that we've received And the spreadsheet that we track all of that activity through the year, we recalculate that, check the beginning balances to last year. So that all agreed to what we expected. And then,
Thanks.
yes, that's great news. And then 2 pages back from that, at the top, it will say Schedule 1. This is the budget to actual variance comparison. So typically the biggest fluctuations here are just due to the timing of the project closings and the expenses. I just wanted to point out there's a large variance in the legal expenses, and that is just because of the eminent domain proceedings legal fees. That's why that variance is so high. There is a corresponding offset to this in the agency fees line. So the net effect of this is actually 0. It just jumps out a little bit more in the expense section since it's broken down in more detail. But just the way that the accounting works for that, we do have to record, those related expenses and revenues. So, but in the end, there's no income statement activity net. So there's no like income or loss related to that.
I will note it is a very rosy picture compared to what the budget was intended, where we were spending in the deficit, and to have a surplus instead was really great. So kudos to staff for that.
Yes. And then the last 2 pages here is a required report on internal controls. So here we're noting that we considered the agency's internal controls over financial reporting when we plan and perform the actual audit, but we're not issuing an opinion on the internal controls themselves, but we do consider them. So this year, especially with the changes in staffing, we received updated internal control narratives for each process. So any receipts that come in, any expenses that go out, and we review those and then we test them, through different audit testing procedures, but also we perform a walkthrough of each of those procedures. And we basically take that narrative and pick a random transaction and follow it through and see if it makes sense. And all of that was completely fine. So we've got that updated as well.
Thank you.
So that's it for the financial statement package. There's also a letter to those charged with governance that we issue. You don't have to sign this. It's basically just where we would notify you of any issues that we encountered, any new changes, any material adjustments. And we had no such issues or adjustments or anything like that. So that letter is pretty status quo, very similar to last year as well.
And that's the letter that begins on page 30 of the packet.
And then lastly is the representation letter. This one has all of the bullet points in it throughout. It's 3-4 pages long. So this one outlines management's responsibilities over the financial statements. There's no significant changes to this letter, but definitely something to review because we'll need you to sign this letter in order to issue the final financial statements.
And so that's actually on the front of your packet
Yeah, it's on page.
in that section.
Begins on page 4.
Okay.
When you say you, is that signed by management? So is that signed by Sarah or is that signed by Susan?
Typically Susan has signed that letter.
Okay.
So in addition to this letter, the last piece we need to issue the final reports is the legal letters to the attorney. So we just sent those out 2 days ago. And we have to time this kind of perfectly because we need to get the attorney's letters back. And then we only have 2 weeks from the date of those letters that they were completed by the attorneys to issue the statements. So, we kind of just sent them out to give you all time to review everything and take your time signing this representation letter and to receive those letters back. So I'm sure we'll get those, in the next week or so. And then when we get the signed representation letter back from you as well, then we'll be completely done and we can issue those statements.
Yes, we lawyers love those requests when we go. They're the best. Well, thank you very much, Emily. I appreciate the thorough explanation. Are there any members of the committee or members of the board who have any questions?
Chair, if I may just go back to the mortgage that is both now an asset and a liability. So that is it's an old loan that the IDA has with Blair Associates. It is a mortgage receivable and they are now current. So that is the reason for the change.
So could I suggest maybe that we just add a sentence to note 2, just saying that who the obligor is and that it is in current status, because I saw that it was going to get repaid this year, but it just didn't say what it was.
And Tom, I'll send you an email after and we'll
Great.
get that wording accurate. We can definitely add that. That's a good
Just,
suggestion.
I mean, the most basic sentence explaining
Yeah.
who the transaction is with.
Okay, absolutely.
I think it's worth noting in that note as well, the date of that transaction. So Emily, when you mentioned that was 1992, that was prior to IDAs being precluded from making loans. And so just so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb,
Okay.
for that would be helpful.
Okay, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from board members or committee members?
Nope.
Okay. Are we going to adopt this as the audit committee, or are we going to refer it to the board for final adoption? I don't remember what our policy says on that, Sarah.
So you would move it to the full board for that. Taking a vote to move that to the board would be helpful upon your review.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adopt the audited financial statements as prepared by Teal, Becker, and Giramonte with a recommendation to the board that they be accepted.
So moved.
Thank you,
Would you-
Darius.
We
And
may have just lost
I think we've
Susan.
lost Susan, so I will second that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Excellent. Well, Emily, thanks so much. I think we're going to see you again in a moment, but for now, we're going to move on to some other topics. So that takes us to the next item under, excuse me, pardon me. On the wrong thing, telling it to go up. The next item under new business is the review of the draft 2021 annual report, which I believe takes us into the Paris reporting, correct?
Woohoo! We'll turn that right over to Tom.
Just too much fun. So Tom, take us away.
Sure. I'll just cover the first few pages and then I'm going to turn it over to Andy to do a deep dive into the projects. I know we did cover a lot of that yesterday at the Finance Committee. But just, the first few pages are really just, questions about general governance of the authority. They're all, very straightforward kind of yes or no questions. I do want to highlight pages 3 through 6 for the board. So this is a listing of all of the board members and the terms and just questions about, trainings and whatnot. I just ask that you take a look as board members and committee members just to make sure that information is correct for your listing there. And, we'll continue to work on this, but I believe it is in pretty good shape after following that. We do then have on page 7 a staff listing, and those are really just the staff of the IDA. So we have Sarah, Andy, and I on there, and then we have just a listing on page 8 of all of the board members. Pages 10, 11 really go into the financials. That really dovetails in with the audits that were just done. And then after that, it really goes into real property, which the authority owns none. and then it gets into projects after that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy to do a deeper dive into the projects.
So, and Andy, before you get started on that, particularly Joe, for your first time seeing these reports, when you are looking at the project reports, Andy's going through the summary spreadsheet that focuses really heavily on jobs and then the required forms that go through. But if you do take a look, in the first one that you see in the report is page 102. Every project that we have has an individual reporting page that reports on many aspects of the agreement with each of the projects. It goes through the total amount, the total benefited amount, the pilot payments made during the year, the exemptions made during the year. It will have the jobs information in there as well. So it's a snapshot for each project. And so we go through annually to update that information, make those confirmations with the various departments that would sort of verify each of those. And there is a page for every single active project that we do that deep dives into that information. I'd also just make a note of two quick things. This is still draft until we hit submit. So a lot of this we are still fine tuning and updating. If there are any significant changes, would bring those back to the board. But you have an almost perfect copy here in front of you today. As Andy's going through the jobs reporting in particular, as well as we go through projects, just as a reminder, we do a cost benefit analysis for every project that is approved by the board. Many of the projects that are approved, the benefits of the project are well beyond the job creation. So in particular for the housing projects that are there, you may see small job numbers, but they were approved because of the revitalization efforts, historic preservation, blight remediation, things like that that go along with it. So, Andy's going to go through the summary. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive here, but also know that every single project has that more detailed sheet that you can look at much beyond the job.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Sorry, Andy.
Andy.
Thank you, Sarah. So we're going to build off of the discussion we had yesterday at the Finance Committee meeting, where we kind of took a high-level view of some of the projects that had underreported jobs, and we looked a little bit closer at the projects that had recapture provisions built into them. That being said, if everybody wants to take a second, if you'd like to follow along, our internal draft tracking sheet was disseminated as board material only. If you want to get that open, you will also notice on the far left column, there are numbers in bold. Those numbers are strictly in there for us to be able to call out a specific line item that we'll be talking about that project on. So as you get that open, a couple high-level statistics. There are 73 active straight lease projects. Of those 73, 70 have reported at least draft results to us. That's 96%. Of those 73, 51 of the 73, or 70%, are reporting at or above our 80% threshold of committed jobs. So that's about 70% reporting there. And without further ado, let's take a look at the other portion of those projects that are hitting lower than 80%. We're going to start at I'll preface this by saying any questions, please just jump in and ask them as you see fit. We're going to head to the top of the spreadsheet. Line number 3, 1475 Washington Avenue Associates. This project reported 5.5 jobs as opposed to the 7 that were committed to. They did state a reason that they had a position terminate and also someone voluntarily left employment. They have posted these jobs, and they're making it a priority to fill them as soon as possible. Coming down to line 11, 144 State Street LLC. This is the Renaissance Hotel, which, as you can imagine, has been hit particularly hard by the stressors of the COVID-19 pandemic. They reported 65 jobs, which was far below the 162 they had committed to at the onset of the project. We are working for this specific reporting year to get a detailed explanation. We've been having ongoing conversations with them, and obviously not only were the occupancy of the hotel rooms themselves affected, which affected the employment, but their banquet space and restaurant were certainly underutilized over the course of the last 2 years. So we will have an explanation from them, but generally this is pandemic related. Hopping down 3 spots to line 14. 40 Steuben LLC. This is the mixed use project on the corner of Steuben and North Pearl. They did not report any full-time jobs as opposed to the 3 that we're committed to. This is due to the fact there has been difficulties releasing the first floor commercial space, which formerly housed the Steuben Market, which directly prior to the pandemic had moved a few spaces down to a new location on Pearl. That space, that ground floor space that is vacant, is currently being marketed. Dropping down another 3 lines to line 17, 4-6 Sheridan. This project is another mixed use project and houses Ama Cucina on the first floor. Although they didn't close until the end of 2020, they did not reopen at all. The restaurant, that is, in 2021, they have been in constant communication with the landlord, and they do plan to reopen in the first half of this calendar year, which is also kind of supported by their social media posts. So we're looking forward to them at this point next year being able to report a more complete jobs picture. Dropping down 2 spots to line 19, 733 Broadway. They have recently been in front of the Finance Committee and Board. As we all know, they reported 3.5 jobs as opposed to 6. This is due to the fact that the previous owner, North Star, had ceased operations in and around the Albany area. So some positions were lost and or transferred out of the area. As the new owner looks to re-tenant the space that was formerly occupied by North Star, we'd expect to see this number increased. Line 22, AFP 107, that is the Hilton Hotel. Similarly to the Renaissance, they underreported 96 jobs as opposed to 160. They did give a very detailed explanation as to why, but generally, as you would expect, their occupancy had significantly decreased based on COVID-19, which precipitated a reduction in operations. And they also had significantly less events taking place, which also reduced their food and beverage operations and generally caused lower staffing levels. Dropping down 1 line to line 23, Albany Med Science Research. This project, which dates back a number of years, a little bit of history, the entire reason for the IDA's initial involvement was to assist this property, which was having extreme difficulties tenanting their space. It's a very specific use space. It's fit out for scientific research, so it would require a very targeted tenant that would choose to operate out of this space. Of note, they reported 92 jobs as opposed to the 287 they had originally estimated would be on site. However, that 92 is significantly higher than in 2020. So that is a great thing. And we are working with them to get an explanation as to the jump of about 33 jobs from the prior year. So we hope to have a little bit more of an explanation on that in the coming days. Dropping down to line 27. Columbia 50 NS. This project is one of 3 projects that has not reported. However, it's a bit of an anomaly. This project, the assistance from the IDA terminated during calendar year 2021 prior to December 31st due to a sale of the property. So there is some attorneys looking at whether or not that requires reporting to the IDA for reporting year 2021. So we are in active communication with them. We have looped in Joe Scott to take a look at this. So we do expect to have closure one way or the other, either a jobs form in or we will be removing them from this reporting list for this year. Dropping down to line 31, Fuller Road Management Corp. This is Kiernan Plaza. This is another project that has underreported year over year. It's slightly nuanced in the sense that when you look at the reason that they give to us for their decrease in jobs numbers, there's really kind of a discrepancy between employees that have quote unquote key card access to the site and then the actual number of employees that they're counting as full-time on site. So there are over 360 employees that have access to the actual site, and they're considering only 96 full-time employees as being associated with the site, which is generally in line with how they've reported over the course of the last 4 years. Dropping down to line 35, MCK 27 Enterprises, formerly known as 70 Morris Street LLC. This was a small residential project in Park South. They reported half a job shy of what they had committed to. Of note, this project did terminate on December 31st, 2021. And so going forward, this will be the last reporting year of this project. We will not see this next year. Dropping down to line 49. And for the remainder of the projects we will be discussing, starting with this next project at line 49, there are recapture provisions in place. These projects all closed on agency assistance after the date at which our recapture provision was built into our documents. So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that as we discuss these. Line 49, 351 Diamond Development. That is the large project that is known as Mount Hope Commons. They have continued to build out the site year over year since they first came through the agency in late 2018. They reported 97 jobs this year, which is nearly over triple of what they had previously reported, but still shy of the 150 jobs. Excuse me, not triple. Yes, no, about triple. Shy of the 150 jobs they had previously committed to. We do expect this number to increase going forward. This calendar year, they've continued to build out the site with a Popeyes opening, and there is a large gas station under construction there as well. We are working with them to really detail out on a tenant by tenant basis the picture of what's happening on the site. So we expect to have more details on this project as well. Dropping down one line to Harmony Mills South LLC. This is the residential conversion of the upper floors at 90 State Street. I think based on what was sent out to the committee last week, this number has already changed. I believe the number that you're seeing is 2, I think. Nonetheless, we've received updated information citing 4 employees on site, which coincides with the number of jobs they had committed to retaining. They are still shy one job that they had anticipated creating. Of note, this project is still under construction, did hit some delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Dropping down to line 53, Morris Place. This is the residential new construction project at 105 Morris Street in Park South. Some of you were at the ribbon cutting in the second half that took place in the second half of 2021. They reported 1.5 jobs as opposed to 2. Since they just came on board in the second half of 2021, we'd expect them to hit their full number next year. Dropping down to line 56, 16 Sheridan Ave LLC. This is the NIC on the corner of Chapel and Sheridan Ave. They had originally committed to 12 jobs. These jobs would have been associated with the yard, hatchet house, and bar. Of note, that space is open. It is operational. And they have numerous employees on site. They did, however, only report 1 full-time employee. In speaking with them, that is because of kind of the limited hours of operation that they have, also coupled with the hour threshold that is considered to be a full-time employee. Doing the math on their end, where they landed was 1 full-time employee. I'd like to back up to, I apologize, a couple of these projects only have sales and mortgage recording tax exemptions associated with them. This is one of them. Mount Hope Commons was the other. So I'll make a note of that going forward, that projects that did not receive real property tax exemptions, 16 Sheridan Ave being one of them. Dropping down one line, 57, Makura Inc. This is the 4 Points Sheridan Hotel that is also located within the Mount Hope Commons site. This project also only received sales and mortgage recording tax exemptions. And certainly as a hotel, their underreporting as supplied by them in terms of rationale was due strictly to the COVID-19 pandemic. And they have not been able to hit where they had forecasted they would be in terms of employment at this point into the project. So we're hopeful that as restrictions and the pandemic eases, we'll see their jobs number tick closer to the 25 that had been committed to. Dropping down one line, 420 Broadway LLC. This is the mixed-use building close to the corner of State Street and Broadway that houses Colson's on the ground floor. While only 0 jobs were reported, we have had conversations with both the project beneficiary and also the ownership team of Colson's. There are jobs on site. There were jobs on site December 31st, 2021. So they are working to get us a revised jobs form to reflect that. So we do expect this to hit the two full-time job commitment level. The next 2 projects are obviously closely related, the Swinburne Building and Swinburne Commerce. This is the affordable housing mixed use new construction project at 526 Central Ave. This project also came online in 2021, especially on the residential portion. The Swinburne Building, which is the residential portion, they're reporting 3 of 4 jobs. They have achieved some efficiencies where the super on site has been able to take on some additional responsibilities, thus the 3 of 4 jobs. As far as the commercial use portion of the property, 32 of the 78 committed jobs have been realized on site. The majority of those 32 jobs are associated with Equinox. There's also a job associated with a small grocery store on the front-facing Central Ave portion of the site. And there's also a job associated with LabCorp. LabCorp does intend to increase their employment in conjunction with Whitney Young, who is expected to move into this site this month. So we would expect to see this number go up quite a bit at this time next year once Whitney Young has initiated full operations on site. And the last two coming up, line 61, the Rep LLC, this is Capitol Repertory Theater. They reported 12 jobs as opposed to 31. Again, the shortage is a direct result of the pandemic. The Rep was forced to close to the public for a good portion of the pandemic and had to furlough and or lay off some employees. They are just now rehiring back and looking to hopefully be able to put on a full slate of events as per usual for the remainder of 2022.
Andy, can I just ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
I noticed that the numbering is a little bit off on ours. Do we have a slightly older version in the email that you sent us?
You might. This is as much as we try to keep this consistent, it's a living document, and as things come in or drop off. Yeah. So
I noticed it specifically because for us, line 60 is Swinburne Building and 61 is Swinburne Commerce, and ours is still showing no progress on the 78 jobs.
Okay. Yeah. So
Just have an older version.
we can recirculate this too.
I
Next
don't
week
know
as
that
well.
that's necessary. I appreciate you going line by line to show these then.
Absolutely. And the last one we're going to hit on is 45 Columbia Street. This project looks to have achieved some efficiencies on site, and we are working with them to get a little bit of color as to what that means going forward. But they did report 0 jobs as opposed to the 1 job that they had projected. This project is a sales and mortgage recording tax only project of note. But again, we hope to have some further color on this in the coming days. Are there any questions, concerns that we can dive into?
I'd note too, prior to going into questions, Bob, as you mentioned, this is changing and updating every day. Andy and Emma have been doing a really incredible job working with every single one of these projects back and forth. We have a detailed jobs reporting form that we require of them. It is no surprise that forms are not always filled out correctly. And so they go through every single one, touch base with the project beneficiaries directly to ensure that the answers are accurate for the day. So they are consistently updating the spreadsheet, and a number of those, as Andy mentioned, we are still in conversations with going back and forth. So I'd note too, when you look at the bottom line numbers, we are down overall on jobs reporting compared to the committed jobs. Just going back to Andy's run through, those are predominantly driven by a couple of consistent quirks with the projects, things like the Center for Medical Science at the Albany Medical Science Research Center having specific space and leasing issues, the tenants at Kiernan Plaza using the key card system versus counting everybody who works out of the building. So there are some of those, those two alone account for, more than 350 jobs out of the net loss there. And then you have the hotels as well hit by COVID that are driving that factor. 50 New Scotland, if it's determined that they don't need to report, that 200 plus committed jobs would also sort of net out as well, so we'll be closer. But I am happy to report that we are up over previous years on the jobs created by projects at the IDA, so that number has gone up beyond last year's reported number.
Great. Okay, anything else on this item? Any committee members have any questions? All right, if not, then let's go back to new business. And The next item of new business is review of the draft 2021 procurement report.
Sure. Starting on PDF page 138, procurement report of the Paris report, it's a listing of all procurements that are over $5,000. I do want to note that we did update the report last night. There was, if your report says Camoin as the first one, that has been removed. That was a carryover from the prior year. We also only have one legal services contract with the city. So that was duplicated twice. So we've made those corrections. But if there are any questions, happy to answer them. And then moving on, the 2021 investment report. So just a few pages afterwards, they're basically asked 4 yes or no questions about the corporation's investment reporting and guidelines. And again, happy to answer any questions on them.
Yes, 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 no. Those are exactly how we want to answer those. Particularly the no, right, Emily? Anyway, okay.
So Chair, if possible, we could take all 3 of those items. They don't necessarily need a vote out of committee, but just to refer the draft to the full board as works in progress. Those 3 make up the Paris report.
The annual Paris report, sure. I certainly have no objection to that approach. If you don't need a formal vote, I think we can move by consensus that those will go to the full board. Darius is giving us 2 thumbs up. We'll let the record note that. Okay, so then we'll move on then to item E, the review of management assessment of internal controls and performance measures report, which appears on page 147 of the, oh, excuse me, I lied. 145 of the meeting materials.
Sure. So staff have reviewed the internal control systems for 2021 along with BST, and there are no corrective actions that are recommended at this time. I do want to note that the audit did not find any material weakness or significant deficiencies, and that the policies and procedures in place were deemed sufficient. And as always, we'll continue to review the pertinent rules and work to strengthen the controls as much as possible.
That's great. Thank you. Any questions from committee members on this, these reports? Okay, hearing none. Do we want to form a motion on these, or we'll treat them the same way that on our consent, we'll move them forward to the full board?
I think we can do it the latter. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, we have consent. Let's move us forward. I guess that brings us to the end of the meeting for the IDAs. Well, let's say, is there any other business? There's a blank item here. Any other business?
I would just mention, I may have missed it at the top of this. If you would like to talk to anyone from Teal Becker, if you'd like to talk to Emily directly, please, everyone feel free to reach out on the audited financials. That is always available, even throughout the year to our board members, but please do so if you feel that you've got a question for them.
And Emily has reached out to the individual committee members, so thank you for doing that. If an individual committee member would like to move us into an executive session to speak to the auditor, we could accomplish that at this time too. I don't have any need to do that. I see Darius is shaking his head. I don't know that we have Susan at this very moment, but we will give her the opportunity to reach out if she needs to. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting of the IDA Audit Committee.
I just wanted to bring up, I don't know if we want to quickly run through the IDA bonds. We did not do that. We did do that yesterday. I can do that quickly if you'd like to do that.
I have no objection to doing it. If you feel that you can run through it quickly, and that'd be fine.
Sure.
I mean, you got in there literally right before Darius made his motion. So
I know.
Just on that skill level alone, I want to hear your report.
So very quickly, as we know, which the IDA can no longer do for the most part, there are bonds still active that we track. Of note, we have all IDA bond forms reporting in. We also work in conjunction with Teal Becker and Emily and her team to confirm ending balances on the bonds. We call those bond confirms. We have the majority of those in. Emily may even have the 2 outstanding in, but we're confident we will have all the confirms in time for our submission at the end of this month. Of note, there are some underreporting bonds, the majority of which are due to, as you would imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic and the staffing changes that we've seen kind of across the board associated with that. A detailed tracking sheet was also sent around previously for the bonds. So if there's any specific questions, we can go into those.
Okay. Any questions?
Nope. Motion to adjourn.
It's quick. It's quick. All those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?